This is the video tutorial for the Happy Days Lauren tote bag. It's a nice sized bag and it has a pocket on the front and a pocket on the back, and it's fully lined. You will need two contrasting fabrics for the front of your bag, straps and front of pocket, lining fabric and interfacing. And this is how we make it. We'll start by making the pocket. Place your pocket fabrics right sides up, so you're looking at the right side of the outer. Take your lining for your pocket, which has interfacing on the back, and place it right sides together. Line up this bottom edge and then add some clips. I've added my clips and I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Sew all the way along and stop. I've sewn all the way across using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. It is correct that you see part of the lining. Now we need to flip it over and make sure this edge matches up with this bottom edge. And pull everything up. Take your time with this so you've got a nice even pocket. The idea is that that is the same width all the way across. I've pressed it and now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and top stitch along the ditch, along this join all the way along. Take your time with this for a nice neat finish. You might want to increase your stitch length. I usually put mine on a 4. I've top stitched all along, and as you'll see, you've got your lining that side and your outer this side. Now I'm going to put this pocket to one side while I work on the straps. We're now working on the straps. I'm using a sample piece for the camera, but your strap will be a lot longer than this. Place your strap fabric right side down, so pretty side down, and fold in half. It's best done on the ironing board, and crease. Then open out and ensure that this edge lines up with this centre crease. And once again press. Do exactly the same for this edge. Bring that into the middle. And once again press. Then finally fold over, press. We're now going to attach the pocket. Take your pocket that you made earlier and fold in half and crease. This is to determine the centre. Take your front fabric and do exactly the same. Fold in half and either finger press or take it over your iron to determine the centre. Line up this centre crease on your pocket with the centre crease of your main outer and line up the bottom edge and add some pins. I've added my pins and now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and I'm going to tack the pocket onto the front using a scant 1/4 of an inch. You won't see these stitches in the final make, and then all along this side as well. I've tacked along each side of the pocket and I'm now going to add the straps. I've already drawn my lines where I'm going to put my straps, and this is how I did it. I measured 9 centimetres from this edge, made a mark, a bit further up, made a mark to the top, and then I joined it all together. I measured 5 centimetres down and drew a line. And as you can see, I've repeated exactly the same on the other side. So I've measured 9 centimetres in and drew a line, and 5 centimetres from the top and drew a line. We're now going to add our straps. Place your strap with the folded edge on the line that you drew. So this would be the open side, and this is the folded side on the line. Make sure it's on the line and then add some pins. I've added my pins and I've made sure that my folded edge lines up with my line I drew. And I've also added a pin across where my 5 centimetre mark was on both sides. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and use a 1/8 seam allowance, stitch length 4, to top stitch all the way along, and when I get to that 5 centimetre mark and pin, sew across and then back down to the bottom. And I'm going to repeat exactly the same for this side. The next stage is to fold your fabric out of the way and then continue sewing your top stitch all the way around until you come back to this side, and then from this side once again carry on your top stitching till you come back to here. We're now going to attach the base fabric. So place your base fabric right sides together and line up the bottom edge and add some clips. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all the way across. I've sewn all the way across, and that's your one side of your bag. That's both my sides completed. Now we're going to join them both together. I'll place the two sides, right sides together. Line up the sides and edges and ensure that these seams all line up on both sides, and add some clips. I've added my clips along the two sides and along the bottom. I'm leaving the box corners free at the moment. Now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine, and this time I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, a bit wider than we normally do, and sew all the way along this side and stop, along the bottom, stop, and then back up here and stop. I've sewn all along using 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm now going to box the corners. I've lined up the two seams and lined up the top edge and added some clips. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all the way across. I've sewn all across, and that's my one box corner done, and I'm going to repeat the whole process for the other side. That's both my box corners complete, and now I'm going to turn my bag the right way out. Place your two lining fabrics right sides together, so pretty side to pretty side. Line up all the sides and edges and add some clips. I've added all my clips. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and use 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting this side, sew all the way down and stop. Sew along the bottom, leaving a gap for turning, so stop there. Restart again and sew along the bottom there, and then all the way back up and stop. I've sewn using a 1/2 inch seam allowance all along the one side, along the bottom, remembering to leave my gap, and back up to this side. I'm now going to work on the box corners. As before, place your fingers inside, open up, and ensure that this seam and this seam meet up. Then add some clips. I've added my clips, and now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and use 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all the way across. I've boxed both my corners of my lining, and I'm going to leave the lining this way out for the time being. I'm now going to join the outer to the lining. Tuck your handles down out of the way as I've done, and then fold your outer in half, and we're going to place the outer now inside the lining. I've placed my outer bag that was turned the right way inside my lining, which was still left the wrong way, and I've ensured that my handles are all facing down out of the way. I've lined up my side seams and my top edges, and I've added some clips. I'm now going to take it over the sewing machine and use 1/2 inch seam allowance, join the outer to the lining by sewing all the way around. I've sewn all the way around the top, joining the outer to the lining, and I'm now going to turn the bag the right way out by pulling through the gap I left at the bottom. I've turned the bag the right way out. The next step is to sew up the gap. Fold in the raw edges, add some clips, and then sew across. I've added some clips, and I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and sew all the way along, closing the gap. I've turned the bag so it's a bit easy for the camera for you to see. I've sewn up the gap. I'm now going to tuck the lining inside the main outer. I've tucked the lining inside the outer, and I've also pressed all the way around. The last bit of sewing is to top stitch all the way around the top. You could use your fancy stitch if you want to. I've top stitched all the way around, and that's your Happy Days Lauren tote bag all finished.